Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pizzapia. With me, as always, are my boys, Derek Brown, a.k.a. D-Bro, the King of Bros, Mr. Big Pod Energy, the one, the only Andrew Erickson is here as well, and today is going to get spicy. It's going to get hot. You might want to make sure that you wear some sort of protection for this show because the takes are going to be en fuego, as they say. We've got some fantasy takes about each position and a wild card take, which can be about anything, which you're going to have to really just buckle up for because it's going to be a bumpy ride. It's going to be fun, but everything that we have here in terms of takes does have some logic behind it. So we're not just trying like some places that give you the hot takes with no basis. No. We have a base for the take, then we have the take. And then we're also not going to compare it to wing sauces or things like that because I'm so sick of everyone. How hot is this take? Oh, it's like this kind of ghost pepper. But stop that. We're not doing that here. We're just going to give you hot takes and talk football because that's what we do at Fantasy Pros. So, Derek Brown, it's nice to see you today. I know that you are on to the very last rung of the pegs for the hat that you're wearing today. You're a little beside yourself. It's been a long afternoon for you. But how are you holding up, buddy? You doing okay?
Doing good. The summer's officially kicked off, spending a lot of time out by the pool. And when you get out of your mom's basement for at least a few hours, you find out that the sun is a very unforgiving mistress. I'm dealing with some sunburn all over today. So aloe vera and lotions and all the things and stuff. But I'm ready for the hot takes, although I've already kind of been scorched by life.
Ooh, yeah, that's okay. Well, you were already hot coming into the show. And unfortunately, you don't like me. I'm very olive complexioned. I walk outside and I'm just tan for the next 6 months. That's pretty much how it goes. Andrew Erickson, what about you? What's your relationship with the sun like?
I first get a nice layer of red, lobster color, fit in with my Massachusetts, living arrangements. Turn a nice lobster, and then, you peel it back after, weeks of pain, and you unveil a nice tan, crisp skin. So it's a work in progress, but I can get tan, and it usually lasts for like 3 days, and then it goes away, and then I just burn again.
Very good.
So me and the sun, we go back and forth. It's a love-hate relationship.
Well, hopefully today none of you get burned by these takes. And of course, we recommend everybody making sure that you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your pods, because we are everywhere. Also, don't forget about our YouTube channel over at Fantasy Pros, youtube.com/Fantasy Pros. You subscribe there and you can enter to win a Javonte Williams helmet. It's June. It's a new giveaway, and it's a signed Javonte Williams helmet that we've got for you. So that's spectacular. The RB1 for the Denver Broncos. Maybe that'll be a hot take on the show. You'll have to tune in to see where we're going with that. But again, that could be yours thanks to our friends at pristineauction.com. We thank them for being our partner and giving away cool stuff to our listeners. All you got to do is be a subscriber over the YouTube channel. Screenshot that bad boy. Go over to fantasypros.com/contest. Fill that out. Show your screenshot. And don't forget to click that little bell for notifications too, because we've got amazing content dropping all summer long to get you set up for all your drafts. And then that Javonte Williams helmet will look really nice right next to your laptop during the draft. And you could brag to all your friends about where you got it. Also, don't forget, when it comes to friends, we've got a whole lot of them on our Discord channel. So if you can join for free today, I suggest you do. Oh, look, you can. Over at fantasypros.com/chat. Yesterday, I was running on fun little stages. I decided to drop a draft wizard link in there, and we did a mock draft together. I brought everybody in the draft up on the stage with me. We talked about our picks. We talked football. It was awesome. We had a great time. We're going to be doing more of that. It's free to join our Discord, but to get into cool stuff like that, like the stages or the AMA channels, you do have to be a premium subscriber to the Fantasy Pros product, which you should be anyway, because it's going to help you manage all your teams this year. So it's just a win-win across the board. So get on that as well at fantasypros.com/chat. Check it out, see what you like, and then come hang out with myself and Derrickson talking football all summer, all fall, all the time. Now, just to set things up here again, we're going to do these hot takes. We're going to start with a quarterback take, running back, a wide receiver, a tight end take, and then the wild card, the hottest of takes potentially. We shall see. I'll tell you what. Why don't we start with you, Andrew Erickson? Let's peel back that first layer. If you've had enough time to take in this take, tell me, give me your 2022 quarterback hot take.
All right. So number one, Justin Fields is going to finish as a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I was going to pick another quarterback here, but you beat me to the show sheet, Joe, and I had to pivot to a different mobile quarterback. Wink, wink. A little teaser there for you to keep tuning into Joe's quarterback hot take. But Justin Fields, you look what he did last year. He was a top 12 fantasy quarterback in his last 4 full games played. He averaged 21.7 fantasy points per game. He averaged 56 rushing yards per game over his last 6, 35 rushing yards per game on the season's whole. And if you look at the last 3 rookie quarterbacks to do that, it was Cam Newton, RG3, and Josh Allen. Newton finished as quarterback 4 his second year. RG3 was QB 12 in just 13 games played, and Josh Allen was the QB 6. So none of those guys, their first year were necessarily, well, Cam's probably the exception because he was really, really good from the start as the number 1 overall pick. But, you know, they never necessarily had like the best situations, you know, coming from bad teams. And I think that the slander with Fields in the situation is just being overblown, and not the fact that he's good. Like, he is exactly what we want for fantasy football as a mobile quarterback. Yeah, the situation's not great, but that just means he's cheaper. He's cheaper to acquire and draft. So even if he doesn't end up getting top 5, which I think that he actually does have in his range of outcomes because of the rushing upside, we've seen it with guys like a Jalen Hurts. Can do it because he gets it done with his legs on the ground. So I'm going to go with Justin Fields as a top 5 fantasy quarterback as my first hot take.
There you go. You know what? Now that you've started there, I might have to raise my hot take on my quarterback even higher. Because you've already gone top 5. Now I'm gonna have to blow it out of the water. But you know, if you need a reminder, just go back and watch some of the tape, watch some of the YouTube highlights of Justin Fields throwing the football at Ohio State, because some great games there to watch him go out there and just look like a stud. So, you know, rookies all have different first seasons in the NFL. And just because a guy struggles in year 1, there's a lot of elements that go into it. And hopefully he can turn things around. But you're right. The potential is definitely there. And you have a lot of good reasoning behind it. Derrick Brown, let's go to you for a quarterback hot take. What do you have for us today?
Well, I'm not going to go top 5. I'm going to go QB1 overall, and I think that is the ceiling for Jalen Hurts this year. I think that he's going to finish as the QB1 overall. He's going to break the fantasy mold. You can even throw in shades of 2019 Lamar Jackson, and it's all lining up for Jalen Hurts. If you look at what he did last year, in the first 12 games of the season, he was QB6 in fantasy points per game. And this is with him running. He was on pace. He was pacing towards 1,000 rushing yards, and then he got injured, and you saw the rushing just drop off a table. Now this year, with A.J. Brown in town, and you had the ascension of Devonta Smith, who quietly was one of the most efficient rookie wide receivers in the NFL last year, like outside of Jaylen Waddle and Elijah Moore and all these other guys that get all this kind of puff and praise. Devonta Smith was really, really good. Now you add in one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL in A.J. Brown. They still got Dallas Goedert, who if you look at every efficiency metric for tight ends, he's up there in everything. And now, with all of these weapons and the rushing equity we've talked about, and Jalen Hurts can take another step forward as a passer, and that really is what can push him into this top 3, him to be the QB1 overall. Because last year, amongst 33 quarterbacks with 200 or more passing attempts, he was 23rd in passing touchdown rate. Now with the ascension of the weapons, the added abilities of A.J. Brown, and if this Eagles offense goes pass heavy like they tried to last year, and then it fell on its face because they just didn't have the weapons to do so. If they go pass heavy this year and we get the rushing and all the stars align, people, Jalen Hurts could have that type of 2019 Lamar Jackson season where he just breaks fantasy football and he smashes and grabs in all formats.
All right, I got to ask you this question. I'm going to throw a challenge flag on the hot take. I want to throw a challenge flag. How many yards, in your opinion, is Jalen Hurts throwing for in this fictitious universe that you've laid out for us?
He throws for, I'll say he gets over 4,300, because last year at the beginning of the season, before they dialed,
big jump. That's over 1,000 more.
Well,
than what he did
before they dialed back all the passing volume, Joe, he was on pace for 4,100 passing yards. I mean, we can go back to the game logs. He was throwing for 300 passing yards. I mean, it wasn't happening every single week, but it happened enough times where we saw this. And I think the Eagles are going to say, look, we've given you all the weapons around you, and now we're going to dial up the passing attempts and say, look, you're either going to step forward and be the guy and be our long-term quarterback, or you're not. But we got to find out. And if he can, he's going to crush this year.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I'm looking at Josh Allen's numbers from the last 2 years where he was QB1. 4,500 yards, 4,400 yards last year, 45 in 2020, and then 400 rushing yards in 2020, but 763 rushing yards. So you've got to get up to that at least 4+ K passing yards. And then in terms of the rushing yards, he's got to get close to 1,000. So I got a guy that I think can get closer to that mark. Now, I don't know if I want to get so hot yet that I want to put him as the number 1 quarterback because I don't think he can get past Josh Allen. I don't know if he can get past Justin Herbert either, but it's Trey Lance finishing as a top 5 is what I had. But then Andrew Erickson said 5 and you said 1, and now I feel like my take is not hot enough. So I'm going to say top 3. Trey Lance is going to play all 17 games. He's going to rush for 1,000 yards because if you look at what he was on pace for last year, it was over 900. So it's not impossible to think he can get to 1,000. He's got that kind of an ability. He's got that kind of athleticism. And I do believe that at some point in time, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get cut, and then he is going to sign with the Seahawks. That's what's going to happen. That's what they're waiting for. He's going to go try to stick it to the you watch. I'm calling it here. That's the other part of the hot take of this show here on the quarterback situation is they're waiting and waiting. Nobody's going to make the trade for Jimmy G. They're going to have to eventually eat it. When they do, he's going to go sign with the Seahawks and then go right at the 49ers twice, and that's going to be his little revenge narrative. But I'm going to go Trey Lance, finishing as a top 3 quarterback this year, behind Herbert, behind Josh Allen, not behind Jalen Hurts. I still, it's a hard one. I know you love Jalen Hurts, and I like him too, but that's tough for me. All right, Derek, let's start with the running back hot take. Give me your RB hot take. What do you got?
Travis Etienne is going to be this year's DeAndre Swift, and he's going to finish as a top 5 running back. And people say, well, Swift didn't get there. Well, when Swift was healthy before he came back and played a limited role, that's what he was pacing as last year. And I think Etienne has the talent and the opportunity to get there. And we need to rewind a little bit. Be kind, rewind, and roll back the clock before the injuries, before the Urban Meyer show, which, I mean, Travis Etienne himself said, look, like, if there's any time for me to miss time, glad I missed last year. Now he's back. And this comes down to not only the type of prospect that Etienne was coming into the NFL as a player that was 12th, 1st, and 20th in yards after contact per attempt over his final 3 collegiate seasons, but also he's a 3-down talent because he was 14th and 4th in yards per route run at Clemson. So now he's stepping into this depth chart. He's coming back healthy. I'm not projecting that he's not going to be, and I know that foot injuries can be problematic, but if he's going to be healthy, Peterson has shown that he's willing to run the rock near the goal line. In the 5 years he was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, he was 14th, 11th, and 10th. So you're looking at 3 seasons with top 14 red zone rushing rate numbers. And people are going to say, what about James Robinson? I don't think James Robinson, we're going to see an effective version of James Robinson or a healthy version of James Robinson. And so then it's like, okay, well, who's going to steal work away from Travis Etienne? When we've seen he's an explosive runner at Clemson, we've seen he can play in the passing game. Snoop Connor, that's who we're worried about? All the other misfit toys on that depth chart? No. And he's competing with targets against Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, Christian Kirk, Laquan Treadwell, Evan Ingram. There is a runway for Travis Etienne to smash. So I think he's going to be this year's DeAndre Swift. He could be a top 5 running back and play all downs, get tons of targets, and the touchdowns are coming.
Yeah, look, the running back depth chart is certainly not one to, Reichwell Armstead, Snoop Connor. I mean, it's not exactly Mekhi Sargent is there right now. So, yeah, there's certainly not a lot of competition there. And once again, you keep going back to the familiarity that we didn't get to see that we're all hopeful for with Trevor Lawrence and Etienne in college, and it was all there, and it worked pretty darn well last time I checked, winning national championships. So the rapport is there, the familiarity is there, and that is important. And if you don't think it's important, then you weren't paying attention last year when Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase got together, because that turned out pretty darn good last time I checked. All right, Erickson, let's switch over to you. Give me the running back hot take for fantasy season.
All right, hot take number 2 for Erickson.
Hot take number 2.
Is Derrick Gore is the running back to own in the Kansas City Chiefs backfield. Now, I make this take with the idea behind the Chiefs. Why do we want the Chiefs running back? Because they're going to score touchdowns. Like that's the idea behind it, because we know that if it's Edwards-Helaire or Ronald Jones, like they're never going to be. It's going to be a committee in some way, shape, or form. Not necessarily going to see a 3-down workhorse back come out of this backfield. So you want the goal line back. And last year, that guy was Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams is now in Arizona. And the other guy that saw red zone usage last year when there were other injuries was Derrick Gore. I think it was on a Monday night game where Derrick Gore randomly just got a bunch of touches in the red zone, and everyone was like ranking him as like a top 30 running back the next week. And I was like, pump the brakes, guys, on Derrick Gore. Like, let's chill out for a second. It was like one series he was in, but it did show at least that the coaching staff and specifically quarterback Patrick Mahomes had trust in Derrick Gore. And I don't think that should be ignored. You know, Darrell Williams was a former undrafted free agent, and he worked his way up the depth chart and ended up being a trustworthy piece for that Chiefs offense last year when Edwards-Helaire got hurt. And I could see Derrick Gore, I could envision Derrick Gore being in a similar situation where, yeah, he was at UDFA, but Ronald Jones hasn't proven that he can be a trustworthy asset. So I think that Gore is someone that's really, really sneaky as a guy you can get super late in drafts as a sleeper running back that when we're talking about down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs, it's like, oh my God, like Derrick Gore turned into this like pseudo bell cow, as we see oftentimes during the playoffs in fantasy, that there's these random running backs that kind of pop out of nowhere for a couple weeks that are the running backs that you need to make that playoff push. So for me, I think that Derrick Gore, even when you look at some of these efficiency numbers, were better than Edwards-Helaire and Ronald Jones last year. PFF rushing grade was better. Yards after contact per attempt was better. He was 4th in the NFL in yards per route run. It's a smaller sample size, but it still shows that I think Derrick Gore already has better hands than Ronald Jones. And when Darrell Williams signed with the Cardinals, I thought it was very telling that Mahomes praised Darrell Williams because he trusted him. He's not going to trust Ronald Jones. Like, I know that for a fact. Like, there's fair. No way he's going to trust fair. Ronald Jones. So Edwards-Helaire, obviously, coming off of the gallbladder surgery, that's been kind of a news item that we've kind of been introduced to over the last couple of weeks. That's where Edwards-Helaire could obviously end up hitting and being the RB1 in this offense. But, I mean, Derrick Gore, I think, is a really interesting sleeper and someone that would not surprise me at all if we're talking about him as a waiver wire pickup during the season and as someone that has a expanded role as 2022 unfolds.
All right, I'm going to pick up the challenge flag that I threw at Derek Brown, and I'm going to throw it at you now because you got some splaining to do. Explain to me this. This guy's never had more than 12 carries in a single game. Why did they go out and spend money on Ronald Jones then?
They spent money on Ronald Jones?
Okay,
why did they bring contract?
Why did they sign?
It's like monopoly money.
It is, to a certain extent, you're not wrong. But if you believe Derrick Gore within this organization, showed enough or showed Andy Reid and company that he's worthy of more looks and more attention, then why even bring in a guy like that? And then why go draft a running back like they did also? So I guess that's.
I mean, they drafted a guy in the seventh. They drafted a guy in the 7th round.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but Pacheco's not. But look, all the running backs now, in terms of like what round you draft them in, I get it. Like everything's been pushed back. So I guess my point is this: Derrick Gore, 11 carries, 12 carries. That's the most you've ever seen him. And I'm not disagreeing with. There were a couple moments last year where he looked good running the football. I guess what's the approach then for people? Because if you draft Derrick Gore, people are probably going to laugh at you, right? In your fantasy drafts, I would imagine. Maybe in a 14-team league, not so much, but in a 12-team league, people are going to, what are you, crazy? So is he more of a guy maybe you should monitor than actually be like an end of the draft guy that you would actually stash on your roster to start the year?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, he's someone that I'm taking stabs on in best ball formats, as my 18th round pick, because I can see a scenario where
makes sense.
If there's an injury to Edwards-Helaire or Ronald Jones during training camp, okay, Derrick Gore goes up the depth chart. I just thought it was interesting that the Chiefs didn't re-sign Jerick McKinnon or Darrell Williams, two guys that they turned to down the stretch and two guys that showed they were capable pass catchers. Like Ronald Jones, we know he can't do that. Like he has been a good rusher at points in his NFL career, and he's shown that he's been able to be efficient on the ground, but he's never shown that he can do anything besides be Stone Hands Jones in the passing game.
Well, what about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Because that's another piece too, where if this scenario does unfold, and it's not impossible, does Clyde Edwards-Helaire become potentially one of the biggest busts of 2022 or of the last 5 years in terms of what people thought he could be and what he ends up being?
I think that's definitely what his trajectory has been at least 2 years in. Now you can always point to the injuries here and there, and it's like, okay, sure. but you can only make so many excuses for so long until it's like, all right, well, you need to produce. I mean, I was making excuses for N'Keal Harry, for missing time because of injuries, but eventually you got to get on the field and you got to produce. And CEH just has not done that enough to at least give me the confidence that, he's locked and loaded. I have no idea. I have no issues or qualms about another running back potentially eating into his carry load. I mean, the goal line back, like that's what I think Gore showed that he could do last year. And it's like, hey, we're going to put Derrick Gore in at the goal line. He's going to be our goal line back. It's Edwards-Helaire catch passes. Ronald Jones will be used in between the 20s. But when we're trying to score, Derrick Gore is a guy we trust. So that's
Gore we
shtick.
trust. Andrew Erickson. That should go on your Twitter handle immediately after the show, right in the bio. In Gore we trust. You know what the best part is? We have now dedicated more time to Derrick Gore on this podcast than any other fantasy football podcast will the entire rest of draft season. Yes, let's go, Fantasy Pros. All right, let's go to mine here, which once again, after that, how do you follow that? I mean, you guys are... I thought mine were pretty good, and then you guys have these nuclear takes about some of these things that I can't even follow up. But how about A.J. Dillon finishing with more half PPR points than Aaron Jones? And I love Aaron Jones. I've been one of the biggest supporters for Aaron Jones. I would go out there before the games and I would draw sides and say, I love Aaron Jones. Go Aaron Jones. I love this dude. I was fighting with people for years when people said, oh, he should be the starting running back. I said, yes, he should. He's the guy. But now we're 3 years into that role. A.J. Dillon was PFF's 5th highest graded running back last year at 90.1. You saw him catch the football, which is the thing everyone talks about. Aaron Jones can catch the football. Well, guess what? So can A.J. Dillon. And that kind of surprised a lot of us who watched A.J. Dillon in college. And we went, wow, he really can catch the football. He is certainly the tougher guy, I would imagine, down in short distances and in goal line areas as well. So there's going to be plenty of targets to go around for both these guys. But in terms of the age of A.J. Dillon versus the age and the tread on the tires of Aaron Jones, which I think we always have to remind ourselves, typically speaking of these running backs, you got a 3-year start window in these guys. And last year was that 3rd year, and he started to break down a little bit. I could see A.J. Dillon going past him, and this is why I keep waiting in drafts. If, in fact, yesterday in that draft I was talking about, guys, where we all drafted together, I had the 12 spot, and I started out with, of course, the 2 wide receivers. I started out with Adams and Diggs, and I loved the running backs that made it back to me. And part of the reason is I feel like later on they're going to take shots on guys like A.J. Dillon, who I think can outperform their ADP, and I think that's something to really pay attention to. So I'm sorry, this take probably isn't super hot compared to the other guys, but I think it's hot. Derek, don't you think it's a little hot, at least compared to how people rank Aaron Jones and are ranking A.J. Dillon? There's like 10 spots between these guys.
Look, I know your love for A.J. Dillon is hot and heavy, and I don't disagree with
enormous
it.
thighs.
Look, when you get seduced by the quad juice, I understand it, okay, Joe? A.J. Dillon has the talent. And I think that the passing game role is really what's interesting about him, too, because everybody is talking about, Aaron Jones' splits without Devontae Adams. And it's like, we've seen A.J. Dillon being a really efficient pass catcher as well. So how do we know that he doesn't get the red zone role? How do we know
they don't just divide in half? That's my point. Is if it divides in half, and you got I guess here's the point I'm trying to make too, just across the board. I want the younger back. I just want the younger back nowadays. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. I'd rather be wrong with the younger back than stay 1 year too late with the old guy at the dance. That's where I'm going to go. All right, let's move on to the next bit here, because the wide receivers are clearly that's the goods. That's where it's, I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to start this time because I'm tired of being embarrassed here by how hot Derrick Gore. We just did 10 minutes on Derrick Gore. Bro, unbelievable.
That was a beautiful take.
It was gorgeous. It was a thing to behold. He is now the unofficial mascot of this show. All right, so here you go. Jaylen Waddle outscores Tyreek Hill in fantasy points, period. Across the board, every single format, standard, half, full, doesn't matter. Tyreek Hill had a career low in yards after the catch last year, just 4.3. That's 42nd overall. Yards per route run, 2.14, the 11th. Hill's ADOT also slipped dramatically, 10.6, which was the lowest it's been since his rookie season. So he's a smaller frame guy, Tyreek Hill. And I guess the point that I'm making is smaller frame guys who rely on speed, typically that wall comes up pretty quick. There's a great evaluation system going on with the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of talent over the years. Don't you think they know what's worth an investment and what's not? And the fact that they were willing to move on from this investment and go to the next thing, they're getting out while the getting's good. And I feel like we could see a dramatic drop off because now not only you're taking all those little stats that I just gave you about Tyreek Hill, now you're also adding into Tua Tagovailoa into this equation, who is not anywhere close to the quarterback that Patrick Mahomes is. So now you're compounding all of those issues. He can't throw a great deep ball, right? We know that. On top of which, some of the other metrics when it comes to grading Tyreek Hill have regressed a bit. Now you're looking at a player who, I'm not saying he's on the decline or he's terrible, but I'm just saying Jaylen Waddle is younger. Jaylen Waddle already has a rapport. Jaylen Waddle, from a target standpoint, is going to, I think, get more targets than Tyreek Hill because, frankly, I think he's going to get more opportunities to be open. Whereas people are going to be looking at Tyreek Hill, doubling Tyreek Hill. And now all of a sudden, Jaylen Waddle is open everywhere all the time. And it's real easy to just hit the open guy because that's what Tua does best at the end of the day. It's what he did best at Alabama. So Jaylen Waddle, better investment than Tyreek Hill. Let's go. Andrew Erickson, you want to throw a challenge flag on that, or are you with me?
No, man, I like chasing after the youth of a Jaylen Waddle. And I mean, Tyreek Hill's getting ranked and drafted ahead of Waddle on name brand, because he's always been attached to Patrick Mahomes. Correct me, I'm wrong. He was attached to Alex Smith as well, but that's when he was uber young and like at his peak in terms of kind of becoming one of the fantasy football's best wide receivers. So I think that the take for Waddle over Tyreek Hill is pristine.
Oh, pristine, just like an auction I know of. All right, Andrew, let's go to you for your wide receiver take. Who you got for us? Who's the hot take fantasy wide receiver you want to throw out there?
All right, hot take number 3, Courtland Sutton is this year's Cooper Kupp. And this is pinned on my Twitter profile. Follow me on Twitter at @AndrewErickson_. And I made sure I got this take out very early on in the offseason because I knew that people were going to follow it and chase it once we started to figure out, Courtland Sutton, Russell Wilson. And before I even get into some of the stats, I just want to point out that on the Audibles podcast, they talked about Courtland Sutton. It was actually Cecil Lammey talking about the Denver Broncos. He's very plugged into Denver. And he's already talking about how Courtland Sutton and Russell Wilson are developing this amazing chemistry together. Like he's seeing it playing out during OTAs. So I just think that the planets are aligning for Sutton to just have this unbelievable year. You look at the pairing with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has been an elite downfield passer. Courtland Sutton was top 5 in air yards last year. So you have the quarterback pairing with the wide receiver that can win down the field, where big plays are made, where you get more fantasy points per play. Courtland Sutton now has that with Russell Wilson. Courtland Sutton's also a red zone monster. How do you score fantasy points if you're not scoring big plays? You score touchdowns. Sutton led the Broncos in red zone targets in 2021 last year. He also led all wide receivers in target rate inside the 10-yard line in 2019. So I just love the touchdown upside. Wilson, if you look at him in the last 3 years, there's been a Seattle wide receiver that's ranked top 5 in red zone targets every single year. So even when Russ is not necessarily always cooked from a total passing attempts perspective, he's always ranked near top 5 in the NFL in terms of end zone targets, red zone targets, because that's where he's feeding his guys. And that's what's been able to make guys like Metcalf and Lockett fantasy reliable, despite the fact they don't always see a ton of volume in their offenses. They see high quality targets. And that's what we're going to see from Courtland Sutton. So for me, Courtland Sutton, this year's Cooper Kupp, let's go.
You know, it's a fascinating take, and you have a lot of good reasonings behind this one. This one I actually like a lot because, it makes sense. Even though I'm on the Jerry Jeudy side of things, who, by the way, the charges were dropped, I believe, yesterday against him. So that is a good thing for his fantasy value and a good thing for him personally. Derek Brown, where do you land on the whole Sutton-Jeudy thing? Because I honestly don't remember. Because basically Andrew and I just argue about this every show. And God forbid if something happens to Courtland Sutton between now and September 1st, I don't know. We have to put Andrew into a bubble of some kind. It's going to be really, really difficult. Your thoughts on Kenny B. Cooper Kupp?
I can't stop laughing because if anybody's watching this on YouTube, as soon as Andrew went into his take, Joe leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms, and he sat just like this the entire time. Just
that was my Larry David pose. My Larry David pose where I was like sometimes I look at him real close like this. Now, I like Courtland Sutton. I like him as a player.
I know, but I mean, I think you take this as quiet Jerry Jeudy slander, and I love this take about Courtland Sutton because if you look at Courtland Sutton's career arc, he was on his way to entering the elite of the wide receiver tier in the NFL. If you go back to 2019, he was top 10 in yards per route run. Then we saw the ACL, and then he had to deal with the poo-poo platter of quarterback play last year. So I think that coming second year off the ACL, we see Sutton's yards per route run go up. We know he owns the deep role in this offense, and if Russ is going to be chucking it deep, I'm fully on board. I love this take. I'm sorry, Joe. You're going to do the rest of the podcast with your arms crossed because I stamp this take, deliver it to the masses. Okay. This is fantastic.
I'm used to the lone wolf. It's fine. That's not a big deal. The wolf will stand alone here.
Today, your wolf pack grows by none. We sit with Courtland Sutton.
I think it's always the most important thing, and I think Andrew and I've had this conversation either on the shows or not on the shows, because whether you guys realize this or not, this is a fact. Every show that we do together, after the show, we end up continuing to talk football for another like 15, 20 minutes. So the show is the show. Like, this is the show. And then when we stop doing the show, the relationship just continues the exact same way that you're listening to it. And we were talking about like trying to identify the next Cooper Kupp, trying to identify that next guy, because those are the things that win you fantasy leagues. One question I'm going to ask you, Andrew. Cooper Kupp also was Cooper Kupp last year because at one point in time, Robert Woods started to tick up a little bit. Then the injury happened. And then it was just the Cooper Kupp show again the rest of the year until eventually OBJ kind of got acclimated into the offense a little bit towards the end. Is that even possible considering how many options Russell Wilson has, that somebody could dominate the target share, dominate the productivity in this offense with the names like Judy, even Tim Patrick, who's in very good, KJ Hamler? This is a really, Alberto, it's a great group of talent here. Is there any way that you think Courtland Sutton can still achieve that with all these other guys that are very good as well and very capable?
I think so, because he's the only one that's an alpha. Like look at the entire roster. Like, who on that roster actually breeds? Like, you look up and down. Like, if you were just watching, I guarantee if we all went to Broncos practice and we just watched the receivers play, we'd be like, oh, wow, yeah, Sutton is clearly the alpha in that offense. Because I just think that's what he's done his entire NFL career when he's been healthy and when he's had somewhat stable quarterback play. Like, even when Jerry Jeudy's been healthy, he's really operated as like a secondary piece. Like, he's never been the guy that's dominated all the types of targets in the offense. And I just think that Sutton, you know, at 6'4", like this gargantuan outside perimeter wide receiver that can get open, I just think he fits so well with what Russell Wilson looks for. And I mean, the relationship that we saw from like Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett, I thought that was so special. And if Courtland Sutton can capture that, I know that KJ Hamler is getting like the Lockett comparisons from like a skill standpoint, but I'm just looking for the guy that captures his relationship with Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. And so far, everything that I've read, everything I've heard, it's Courtland Sutton right now. Like, that's the guy that Russell Wilson is staking his claim, because this is a year Russell has to prove it this year. Like, he has a lot of doubters after basically, you know, flaming out in Seattle. You know, they got rid of him. They traded him because they're like, we don't want you anymore. And he wanted out. And now he wants to do what Brady did when he went to Tampa Bay. He wants to do what Stafford did when he went to the Los Angeles Rams. And how is he going to get there? With Courtland freaking Sutton driving the train. Let's go.
Courtland freaking Sutton. There you go. You can follow him at Andrew Erickson _Gore over on Twitter. Let's go to you, Derek Brown, for your wide receiver hot take. Boy, oh boy, the earth is scorched right now. So it's all on you now, Derek. What do you got?
All right, we're going to talk about good quarterbacks. We're going to talk about good offenses, as Andrew keeps going back to. Let's invest in good offenses. And I think Russell Gage is going to be a top 15 fantasy wide receiver this year. And not only have we seen him handle volume, play well last year, Russell Gage was not a player I was in on last year, but this year, oh yes, baby. Because what we saw last year, he was incredibly effective. You go check out all the fantastic work by Matt Harmon over reception perception, 66th percentile versus man, 60 percentile versus press. You look at other different types of metrics. He won with various different route types. He got open amongst all wide receivers with 50 or more targets last year. He was 17th in yards per route run, right behind Chris Godwin, who I don't think we see start the season healthy. I think they're going to ease him in. I think this signing by Tampa Bay in the offseason was fantastic. We know that Brady can support multiple weapons. Gronkowski's still not back. Even if he comes back, he's another year older. Gage was incredibly efficient last year. He was also 11th in yards per route run versus man coverage, right behind, yes, let's throw this name in here in the same conversation because this is how good Gage was, right behind Devontae Adams last year. So I think you're talking about effectiveness. You're talking about a high passing rate team, high pace, good quarterback play. They are going to be amongst the top 5 to 7 scoring offenses in the NFL this year. If it's not Chris Godwin and if Mike Evans, I'm not saying he takes a step back. He can have a fantastic season. Brady is going to throw the ball a ton.
He threw for 5,000 yards, just like Jalen Hurts will next year. 5,000 yards.
I didn't even say that, but what I am saying here is that Russell Gage is going to be fantastic. I mean, throw the challenge flag on me here, Joe. I mean, tell me how I'm wrong on this one.
No, I like Russell Gage this year. I kind of like Russell Gage last year. I thought there was a lot of good reason to be in on Gage last year with the Calvin Ridley situation, but nothing worked in Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta was just the offensive line killed everything there. And I think at the end of the day, you could have all the talent in the world if you don't have the time to throw the football, which is what we were just talking about the other day. It's like when you're talking about like deep balls, right? I said, well, to throw a good deep ball, it also helps to have a little bit of time to throw that deep ball. I said this yesterday. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Derek. I think if you're somebody who loves DeAndre Hopkins on the bounce back this year, one of the best later wide receivers you can draft for those first few weeks to get you by is Russell Gage. What do you think?
I mean, I love it. I think he's going to walk into production immediately. And the thing we need to talk about it with Chris Godwin, too, even if he doesn't start the year on the pup, if he starts out with week 1, what type of effectiveness do we see guys coming off of ACLs, especially that late in the season, in their first season back? We're not going to see the same type of efficiency. Maybe he gets the volume, but if we believe targets are earned, Gage could be better in this offense at earning targets, and this is not shade at Chris Godwin. But coming off an ACL, this short of a time frame, and you have Russell Gage who's shown this type of efficiency, and now he gets the Brady bump, I'm buying in heavy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge difference in terms of the offense, in terms of the volume he might be able to see. But Chris Godwin, you're 100% right. I mean, even if he does start the year, how healthy is he going to be and ready fresh out of the gate? I think that's a real, it's a reach for me personally. All right, on to tight end, hot takes. I'll start this one again just because the boys seem to be having flamethrowers attached to their backs today. I'm going to go ahead and say that Dalton Schultz will be a tight end. Not 1, not 2, but 3. He will be in the top 3 when all is said and done. It will be him, it will be Mark Andrews, and it will be, dare I say, Kyle Pitts? No, it'll probably still be Kelsey. So Andrews, Kelsey, and then Schultz is probably where it's going to be. Well, I got to stay on my Marcus Mariota brand here, at least when Derek's around. When he's not around, I can talk all about it. But here's the thing. A lot of people don't even realize this last year, that Dalton Schultz still got 104 targets last year. 104. Let that settle in for your brain for a moment. A tight end who got 104 targets, a tight end that has red zone upside, a tight end that now has a lot of vacated targets because Amari Cooper is now out of this offense. Oh, and Michael Gallup's probably going to start the year on the pup. So there's not a whole lot of guys that I feel like Dak Prescott has faith in. And this guy brings red zone appeal. We all know that. I feel like when you watch Dalton Schultz every year, I feel like he just gets better and better. And I was somebody a couple of years ago that was in on, again, just the concept of I want the Cowboys tight end. And I drafted Blake Jarwin and he got immediately hurt. And I went and I picked up this Dalton Schultz guy that all of us looked at each other and went, I don't know. Let's just see if it works. And you know what? It's worked ever since. And the guy continues to improve. He continues to impress. And I do believe that the path for this sort of a huge finish is there for him. And if you are not somebody who likes to draft the top of tight end, I understand why. To me, this is the perfect guy to take because he's going right now. He's ECR tight end 8. I don't understand how he's 8. I just don't get it. People like to take Hawkinson ahead of him. How? Why? You tell me that's a better offense? I don't understand it. Dalton Schultz, top 3 fantasy tight end. Anybody want a piece of me? What do you want? Come on.
I love this.
Nothing?
I love this.
You like this?
Love
Andrew
this.
Erickson, you don't like anything. Do you like this? You like Courtland Sutton?
I
Do
do
you
like
this?
the call on Dalton Schultz. He seems like he's just this player that's underrated. And I don't know if it's because he just doesn't profile as a typical tight end, but we see this all the time with these volume tight ends that just end up being top 5 finishers every single season. And it's actually interesting. I actually bumped Dalton Schultz up in my rankings a little bit. I looked at his profile picture on Twitter.
Just now, when I was talking? Just now you
no,
did it?
not
I
now.
influenced you?
It was about,
Damn it. I was trying to be an influencer. I'm trying to get that blue check mark still as an influencer. I thought I would finally achieve that status.
His Twitter, Abby, is just oozing swagger. He kind of reminded me of Travis Kelce in that essence. I was like, man,
search this now.
This dude is like dressing up like Travis Kelce. Like I like the call, Joe. I like it.
All right, thank you very much. Look, I'm okay being the lone wolf. I want to see this Dalton Schultz. I got to Google this. Why don't you take it from here with the tight end, Andrew Erickson? I'm gonna go look at the Dalton Schultz profile pic that you're talking about here.
My tight end hot take going to go to the Atlanta Falcons, a very polarizing team that we talk about on this podcast. So with Kyle Pitts, he's going to break Zach Ertz's receptions record of 116 catches in a season and also break Travis Kelce's record of 1,416 receiving yards, which was set in 2020, because I believe in Kyle Pitts, the talent. You look at Marcus Mariota. We've talked about him a lot, either on the podcast and also off the podcast. But one thing that Mariota did do at one point in his career in 2015 was he fueled Delanie Walker to 94 catches. And that was Mariota's rookie year that he was able to do that. He didn't even start in all those games. So I think that when you look at what Pitts did as a rookie tight end, he was just one of 3 rookie tight ends at 21 years old to average at least 60 receiving yards per game as a rookie. The other 2 guys that did that, Justin Jefferson, Juju Smith-Schuster, the last 2 guys to do it, both reached 1,400 receiving yards in their second seasons. Now, Pitts, from a fantasy perspective, is someone that I'm kind of struggling with because I always talk about I want good guys on good offenses. And I know we've talked about Atlanta's offense, and we kind of know that it's probably not going to be good in 2022 with Mariota or Desmond Ridder under center. But if there's anyone that's going to break the mold, it's the unicorn himself, which is Kyle Pitts, who, again, he plays wide receiver, but he gives you tight end fantasy designation. So he's a player that I find that if he falls into the 4th round of best ball drafts, that I can't pass that up because I know of the talent with him. He's so much more talented than Delanie Walker. I mean, if Mariota could get Delanie Walker to almost 100 catches, I think Pitt's getting to 115 and 117 catches with an extra game. I think that's definitely possible. And if he's able to do a little bit more after the catch, maybe catch more than 1 touchdown, then Kyle Pitts.
Just 2, 3. We're not asking for much.
I know. It's really, it sucks because you look at the offense like, oh man, he's never going to catch any touchdowns. Well, he didn't catch any touchdowns last year either. So, I mean, maybe it was that Matt Ryan effect with the Julio, where Julio never caught touchdowns from Matt Ryan. So let's pray that that's what cursed Pitts last year, and he'll flirt more with like 6 or 7 touchdowns. But yeah, I think that Kyle Pitts having a tight end 1-esque season is in the range here. I think he could break some records. He broke my heart last year when he was unable to break the rookie record, which he should have done. So I think he makes up for it in year 2.
All right. Derek, you're from the South. There's a very common phrase there. Oh, bless his heart, right? Bless his heart. Andrew, you have spent every podcast telling us all about good offenses and the ecosystems and the environments and all those fun buzzwords. And then you want to put record-breaking tight end on Marcus Mariota. You're going to put that kind of pressure on Marcus Mariota to be the guy to help Kyle Pitts get there. Bless his heart, Derek. Is this possible? Can this be done? I love Kyle Pitts. Everybody knows how much I love Kyle Pitts. I was the guy pressing for him to be a top 5 guy last year. People said I was crazy, but that was with Matt Ryan. And the offensive line is still bad. So I've learned enough. Okay, the O-line hasn't gotten better. Is there any path for Pitts to get one of these? Can he at least break the receptions record? I think that one's possible. The receiving yards, I think, is a tougher sell.
I mean, I'll stick with Andrew on this one. I think both of them are in the range of outcomes. I think Atlanta.
I'm all by myself.
Derrickson reigns supreme.
Joe, go ahead, fold your arms again. It's that time of the podcast again.
I look like that grumpy old puppet from was that ventriloquist guy who's got the old man puppet? You know the guy I'm talking about. What's
Pinocchio?
his name? No, not Pinocchio, you moron. He's the famous comedian ventriloquist guy.
Jeff,
It's like the zombie
I don't
thing,
know.
right?
I'm
It's like
blanking. It's darn it.
Everyone's gonna yell at us in the YouTube comments. It's Jeff something. Jeff Dunham.
It is.
That's
It's
what it is.
Jeff Dunham. There we
I
go.
don't remember who it was. I'm the cranky old man, but that's fine. By the way, I did see the Dalton Schultz picture. That is pretty amazing. Who is on his shirt? That's the thing I can't figure out. What's the mugshot on his shirt, and who is that person? But yeah,
people that are sleeping on him in fantasy.
It looks like a guy who hosts a fantasy football podcast, but not a very good one. That's what it does look like. Somebody who is against him. All right, so we got Kyle Pitts, we got Dalton Schultz, Derrick Brown. Take us to another tight end hot take.
Alrighty. People can't stand the fact that he got paid. People do not want to invest in him, even though he's basically free money in drafts right now. David Njoku finishes as a top 5 tight end in fantasy, and all of his efficiency metrics scream this, people, and the opportunity. We talked about a path for Kyle Pitts to gobble up volume. We talked about a path for Dalton Schultz to gobble up volume. David Njoku is competing for freaking targets against Amari Cooper, and that's it. And I'm sorry. I understand that people love David Bell. I understand that people love Donovan Peoples-Jones, although I don't really understand why. David Njoku has been crazy.
That's
crazy efficient.
Donovan Peoples fun.
I mean, outside of our name games and having fun with alliteration and abbreviations and things like that, I don't understand it, because David Njoku checks all the different boxes we want from a massive breakout tight end. He is athletic. He tests off the charts. His efficiency metrics last year were fantastic. I mean, if you look at him last year, he was 7th in deep targets, 5th in deep receiving yards, 11th in yards per route run, and 5th in yards after catch per reception. Now we're talking about this year, and look, I understand that Deshaun Watson and what happens with him is still up in the air. I get that. But we can see him get to the volume point where we need him to hit to get to that point, because since 2018, the tight end 5 in fantasy, and this is outside of the year with Robert Tonyan and his crazy 11 receiving touchdowns, the tight end 5 has averaged 107 targets per season. Now, we're talking about an offensive system that over the last 2 years with Kevin Stefanski has been 3rd and 4th in target share to the tight end position. They're averaging 140 targets to that position over that span. And people are like, okay, what you're saying, he gets over 100 of that? How does that happen in a run-first offense? And okay, Harrison Bryant is still there. I think Cleveland passes more this season, and they showed us a small inkling of this last year. From weeks 12 to 18, this offense was 13th in neutral script passing rate, and they were 3rd in neutral pace. Now, if we get the quarterback upgrade and we see Deshaun Watson, he plays for most of the season, then you're talking about more passing attempts. You're talking about a more efficient passing offense. And David Njoku has shown you that he is that type of efficient player. He has the athleticism to hit this type of ceiling. All the stars are aligning for him to crush in fantasy. And you were talking earlier, Joe, like Dalton Schultz's ECR tight end 8. David Njoku is outside the top 12, 15. He was last time I looked at it. He's free. And people are like, nah, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. I'll just go ahead and draft like Tyler Higbee, who hasn't done anything.
He's 21 right now in half ECR.
That's insane. That's insane.
It's absurd. It's absurd. Someone also asked me yesterday about, do you still like Njoku and all these guys? I'm like, because, we did get another... It is news relevant that there was another person added to the Deshaun Watson case, another obviously complaint and accusation, to which I said, it's the 23rd. We should have been concerned when it was 1. It's the same concern when it's 1 as when it's 23 of these accusations. It's horrible that he has put people in this situation. It's a terrible thing. At the same time, whether it's 1, whether it's 23 or 43, he is going to get whatever punishment they eventually deem, and that's going to be there at some point looming. But until we have definitive notion on it, there's every reason to believe in Cooper, every reason to believe that, Njoku. It depends on how many games and what happens in between. And I even said this yesterday too, and I don't remember I said it on the show, not on the show. The best thing Baker Mayfield can be is a good soldier and rebuild his credibility in the league and stick around and play well and be a leader during those weeks where Watson's not there. And maybe, just maybe, he'll have a second chance somewhere else in another organization next season. All right, it's wild card time. So here we go. This is going to be about anything we wanted in fantasy football. So I'm going to start with one, and I think it's pretty hot. We'll see how it stacks up to my friends here who were, like I said, nuclear today, these guys. Skyy Moore leads the Kansas City Chiefs in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns and receptions across the board. My guy. We're always looking for the rookie breakout guy. Nobody thought it was going to be Justin Jefferson. Everybody said, oh, Jamar Chase is complaining that the ball's too big and it doesn't have a stripe on it anymore. Stupid nonsense I've heard in the last 2 years. Kirk Cousins can't support a big-time wide receiver. What are you, crazy? Of course he can. Look at what's been going on there for years. Look, Skyy Moore, I went back and I started looking at all the Chiefs rosters from the past and all the receivers that they tried to sell me on in Kansas City that were going to be these veteran guys that they believed in. I found some fun names like Chris Conley, like Jeremy Maclin. Remember when Jeremy Maclin was supposed to come in and be the guy? And then they drafted some guy named Tyreek Hill who was super fast and broke some tackles and was able to escape a lot of people. And wouldn't you know it, he became that guy. I see DeMarcus Robinson. I see Albert Wilson. I see a lot of names. And I start to look at some of the names I see right now, and it's starting to feel eerily familiar on that roster of the guys like Mecole Hardman, who just never is going to happen. Juju may happen. Juju is the biggest competition he's got. But you know what? I've seen enough Juju, and I've watched enough of the Juju health and seen him miss some games here recently that I have distinct concerns about him in this offense. There's every reason to believe that at the end of the day, one of the best quarterbacks in the league is going to be throwing to Skyy Moore. And Skyy Moore is going to be the best receiver in one of the better offenses in football. So we're talking about ecosystems and environments and recycling and all the things that Andrew Erickson likes to talk about. I want to talk about Skyy Moore and the path he has to be the true number one there, not next year, not 3 years from now, this year. Derek Brown, your thoughts?
I love this take so much. I want to hug this take. I want to caress this take. I love this take so much. And people come at, like, I'm with you, Joe. I am absolutely with you here. And people look at our rankings over FantasyPros and I'm like, why do you have Skyy Moore so high? And I'm like, it's okay to like talented players. It's okay to like talented players on really good offenses. These things are okay, people. Look, we're giving you permission to sit here and love good players on one of the best offenses in the NFL. And I'm sorry, Juju Smith-Schuster is not an efficient wide receiver. Juju Smith-Schuster has not been a good NFL wide receiver for quite some time. But people keep still going back to that well and saying, oh, but he's 25 and oh, Patrick Mahomes. And I'm like, then why don't you love Skyy Moore? Because he's better than Juju.
Derek, there's equal chance that this is Juju's swan song that it is Juju's big breakout, like rebound. Oh my God, he's a star guy again. I just feel like we're in that fork in the road. And I could see those two things easily, going one way or the other. And look at the rest of the jabronis on the roster right now. Corey Coleman, Mecole Hardman. You keep looking around. Look, now Justin Ross is an interesting piece. And Justin Ross is an incredible talent. But that is a huge injury to overcome. And I know people were talking, they saw that clip of that amazing catch he made. Like Justin Ross, that dude can ball. That dude can play. There's no doubt about that. But to me, Skyy Moore has that path. Andrew Erickson, if you want to talk about Skyy Moore first, if you don't, that's fine too. But I want to know what your thoughts are about a big wild card take that you're going to throw out here at the end for us.
Yeah, I'll just mention, so agree on the Skyy Moore take. And I think that is interesting to bring up Justin Ross as just someone to kind of keep tabs on, because we all know he fell because of injury concerns. Like that's why he fell. And right now he's not, doesn't look like he's playing hurt. And he's not playing in full pads. So there's still question marks he has to answer. But if he gets through training camp and is like on the roster, like this guy definitely was not an undrafted talent. And this is something you have to remember when guys.
He is a big time talent.
Yeah. And this is something you need to kind of remember and reset in your mind, that when guys go undrafted, you have to remember, okay, well, why did he go undrafted? It was not because this guy wasn't talented. It's because no one was willing to invest anything in him based on his injury concerns. And we see this with, Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill was not a 5th round pick. Like that was not a representative of his talent whatsoever, but he had off the field issues. And there's a lot of guys that come out of the woodwork that they're undrafted, but when you actually look at the talents, like, well, what if the Chiefs had drafted Justin Ross in the 4th round? no one would be nearly as bullish on Skyy Moore. Like, I'm being totally on. Like, would you guys be as bullish?
Of course not. No,
exactly,
absolutely not. And look, it's not about the talent with Ross. I just don't know how much he's going to play and how much that injury will allow him to play. But you're 100% right. If this guy has a good, healthy training camp, if you want to circle names that are going to come out of nowhere and start flying up draft boards late in the game, that would be one, because there's an opportunity there. All right, let's get these wild cards out here. Erickson, you first. Go for it.
All right. So on an earlier podcast we talked about, the breakout wide receivers. And basically one of the main takeaways from Sam Reiner's article was that an average of 7.3 wide receivers are different from year over year, dating back to 2012. So I looked back at last year's wide receiver ones, and I put them on the chopping block of the 7 that I think are not going to repeat. And then I threw in some names of new guys that I think will enter into the wide receiver one conversation. So on the chopping block, Deebo Samuel and your rushing yards. Bye-bye. See ya. Tyreek Hill with Tua. Yeah, no thanks. Deontay Johnson with Kenny Pickett. Yeah, no. ECR wide receiver 13. Bye. Hunter Renfrow. Yeah, was a top 12 wide receiver last year. Have you met Devontae Adams? Yeah, not going to happen. Keenan Allen. This one is tough to get around, but I think Mike Williams is a good receiver. And Allen, we saw his efficiency numbers drop a little bit. Not super confident in that one specifically, but I had to add someone there. Jaylen Waddle for the similar reasons with Tyreek Hill and the fact that he's now competing with Tyreek Hill. I think that might edge him out of the top 12. Maybe in PPR he sneaks in. And then DK Metcalf, Drew Lock, like Geno Smith. Yeah, not going to happen. So those are my top 7 in terms of guys that I think are going to get cropped out. Do you guys have any want to throw the challenge flag? I know, Joe, you're going to throw the flag on Waddle. Anybody else?
Well, I have to throw the flag on Waddle on principle of what I said earlier.
Yeah.
And the volume he could see. Keenan Allen and Hunter Renfrow, again,
Dude, he's not going to finish top 12.
No, I know, but also he threw for 23 touchdowns last year, Carr. He's going to get 30 plus this year with Adams around. There's still going to be enough to go around. But Keenan Allen is the only other one that I'll fight you on. Derek, you want to fight about any of them?
No, I mean, it's really Keenan Allen.
It's a pretty good group.
I think outside of that, Erickson laid it out perfectly.
Yeah.
And all right, so who's the new hotness?
Yeah, so the new hotness. So CeeDee Lamb, I mean, that's number one. I mean, he's ranked as a top 6 receiver across the board, and he still hasn't been a wide receiver 1 yet. So I think with no Cooper, I think it makes a lot of sense. A.J. Brown didn't finish in there last year because of injuries. T. Higgins, Courtland Sutton, of course. Michael Pittman Jr., obviously.
Yes.
Allen Robinson, who's done it before. Last year was a disaster. Mike Williams, I think we could see him overtake Keenan Allen. So that's kind of the swap that I did with the Chargers. And then Gabriel Davis. We see this all the time with these high-powered offenses. 2 guys from the same team get in there. We saw it with Diggs and Thielen for so many years in Minnesota. And this year we see it with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis.
The only one I'll fight you on is Allen Robinson, because I think he might be toast. I think there's a good chance he's toast at this point. But that's the only. I think the rest of them is a really good list. I can't. And I love that Gabriel Davis is in there. And I mean, yeah.
I think it goes back to the point I'm trying to make too, is that this is why rounds 3, 4, 5 just draft wide receivers, because all of these guys that I just listed off, that's where they're all being drafted, and they all have. And you guys said it, like. You're not arguing with me at all easily that guy could become a wide receiver.
Oh, these guys yesterday, Erickson, went in a run. There was literally a run where it was Cooper, it was Pittman, like the literal run of like 3 or 4 of these guys. And you could, if you're at a turn, you could double up on them just as easily and take 2 of them. All right, Derek Brown, give us your wild card hot take before we head out for the day.
All righty. Well, I've talked about nasty offenses. We talked about this on Finding a Breakout Wide Receiver episode. I'm going to go back to the disgustingness. I'm going to go to the dumpster fire. Kadarius Toney is going to break out as a top 15 wide receiver this year. We saw the efficiency last year in a very small sample. Wide receivers are 50 more targets. Toney was 11th in yards per route run. He was 9th in yak per reception. He was the 33rd highest graded PFF wide receiver behind Deontay Johnson. And I know everybody says, okay, it's small sample size. Look, he had 7 games where he ran 17 or more routes. Yes, the Dallas game where he exploded was in that. He also had 4 separate games, so 4 out of the 7 where he had 17 routes. Small samples. 4 of those games, he was above 1.6 or higher yards per route run. So it's not like we're not just talking about, okay, he had this one fantastic game, you take that out, and what did he do? He showed us in a limited sample across multiple games that he could be efficient. He drew targets at an extremely high rate. If he could stay healthy, if Daniel Jones can look like some semblance of competence at the quarterback position, and Brian Daboll coordinates an offense, which this is a low bar, people, that's better than Jason Garrett. Again, drop the bar down. And better than Joe Judge. Then Kadarius Toney can explode this year. And he's going outside the top 36 wide receivers. Hell, some formats, top 40. He's free money right now. And he's fighting for target volume with Sterling Shepard, who's 29 coming off an Achilles, Wan'Dale Robinson, who is tiny and a rookie, and the ghost of Kenny Golladay, who is absolutely confirmed as dust. I'm sorry, it's just a fact.
There you go. Confirmed as dust. You're right. Tony's one of the great wild cards of the 2022 season. He might win some people some leagues, or he might be absolutely nothing to teams and get cut. It's certainly fun to talk about. There's no doubt about that. Gentlemen, this did not disappoint. I know we went a little long today, but my goodness, every moment was well worth it. This was great and a lot of good reasoning behind the hot takes, not just trying to be different for different sakes, except for Derrick Gore. Other than that, they were really, really great. So I want to commend you all for all the great work you put in there. Also want to remind everybody, again, here's your path to dominance and greatness. You join FantasyPros.com. You become a premium subscriber. When you do, you get to hang out with us on our Discord at FantasyPros.com/chat. And then, of course, for free, you go over and you subscribe to our YouTube channel, YouTube.com/FantasyPros. Click the bell for notifications. And just for doing that, we like to reinforce rewards here. We might give somebody, actually, not might, we are going to give somebody a Javonte Williams autographed helmet, thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction. So once you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you go over to fantasypros.com/contest and you go ahead and enter that as well. So again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, become a premium member, and then join the Discord. You can't be beat. And then just like hanging out with my boys Derrickson here. It's always a good time to be with us talking football. We hope you enjoyed the show. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Andrew Erickson and Derek Brown, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.